Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Interact podcast. My name is Josh Haynam, co founder and CEO at Interact. Today, I'm joined by Hannah Boeck, who's a marketing expert, and we are going to jump into all things marketing 2026 strategies, mindset, all that good stuff. Thanks for being here, Hannah. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. We are a huge fan of your product. We use it in our own marketing strategy. But I just said before we hit record that I'm a big fan of mindset and marketing. So I'm excited to dive into that today.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's jump straight into it. I'm curious to get your take on what do you think is the most important thing for business owners, that's most of our audience, to keep in mind as they are thinking about marketing as a whole for 2026? Like, if there was one thing you could tell people, like, what's the main focus for this year?
Well, I think it's going to be different than what you'd expect. I think the main focus is you have to begin with the end in mind. Most people are running on reaction and chasing trends instead of looking really clearly at where they want to be at the end of 2026 and then reverse engineering it. So if we don't start there, then I don't even think we know exactly where we're headed.
That's really great advice. I'm just thinking in my head, like, if this is the year that you're finally gonna crack Instagram, if you've always been like a YouTube person or vice versa, right? And it's like, all right, at the end of the year, I want to have X number of followers, or I want to post X number of times. Working backwards for a whole year is so much more reasonable than just like, oh, I'm gonna do that this year with no plan. How do you talk people through that when they're having to run a whole business and it's like, well, marketing is just one aspect of what I do. How do I make time for it? How do I get over the mental hurdle of like it feels like it's a lot? How do you think about that when you're jumping in with somebody?
Well, I think when you start in the opposite direction of chasing a goal, it can be really overwhelming because it's what do you do? What am I going to focus on? There's 10 million things to sift through. There's a lot of advice out there. So if we go to the idea of beginning it with the end in mind. So I would say most people listening to this are looking to grow, whether it's grow an audience, grow in your sales, grow a team, whatever it is, there's some level of growth that you're looking for. So we can set some sort of metric. I'm a firm believer, and I come from a background in speech therapy. I'm a firm believer in setting goals within the zone of proximity. And what that means is that we set a goal that is a stretch, but it's not so far out of what we deem possible that our nervous system gets on fire. So we set that goal within the zone of proximity so it's achievable, but it's going to push us. And then the question that I ask is, what did I do to achieve this? So let's say the goal is to grow to 100,000 Instagram followers or a certain number of YouTube videos or six figures monthly in online sales. The next question is, how did I achieve it? And you work backwards because as the day goes on, if you are a business owner, the head of a marketing team, a solopreneur, you're putting out fires all day long. You are getting distracted. There are people shooting all over you on podcasts. They're shooting on you on social media. And so you're going, oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. Instead of going, no, these are the 10 things I did to achieve my goal. And if this decision and this thing presented to me today isn't going to move me closer to that goal, then it's a no. And that's how we can sort of start to shape our priorities and not get distracted
That's really great
because
advice. That's really great.
it's
If I can just jump in, because I'm like, my gosh, that is everybody's getting distracted, especially right now. There's like so many things that you can be afraid of. But please continue. I just wanted to affirm what you just said.
well, because I think the thing is I think that distraction is actually fear. And what happens is that we allow ourselves to get distracted and shift away from what our priorities are because oftentimes when we're chasing a goal, it's demanding us to show up in a new way, to try new things, to lean into uncertainty. And the only guarantee we have in business is every decision we make has an uncertain outcome. We have no control over the outcome. And so it's really easy to get distracted and have 10 million things and put out fires and be chasing goals instead of reverse engineering them because it actually, from a subconscious mind standpoint, is keeping us safe because it keeps us distracted and we don't have to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone.
I like that. I think that distraction is fear almost all the time. And it is so easy to just do that, like to just be distracted. Oh, this, all these things are preventing me from doing what I need to do. There's so many things going on in the world. There's so many problems that I can't fix. But this is my view, and I'm curious your take on this. But like, I think that a lot of times it's easier to do that because you are not faced with failure. Because when you stop being distracted and you do the thing and then it doesn't deliver the way that you wanted to on the first try, then you feel like you failed. And people are just terrible at that. They're just terrible at accepting that, like, you might have to try something 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 times before you finally break through. And it's much easier just to go from distraction to distraction, be like, oh, well, it's because of this, because of that. But I think that's what's the root of that fear is that people don't want to be faced with, like, oh, I committed and I tried the thing and it didn't work.
Well, yeah, because what happens is that people make failure mean something about them. So if you are stuck in a place of the success of my business or the outcome of this thing that I try determines my self-worth, then it's really scary to try something new. And we have a saying in our business that 70% perfection is success and 100% perfection is failure, because we can tinker all day long on that last 30%, but it's not going to get us anywhere. It's actually going to stall us out from taking action and implementing some sort of strategy. And so we can talk strategy all day long, but unless you start to address these things like distraction or perfectionism or that fear of failing, then no strategy is actually going to work, because whether it works or it doesn't work isn't actually what matters. What matters is the data and what we get to extract from that opportunity. So I took up the hobby tennis last fall. And I will tell you, as a recovering perfectionist, meaning I'm very much a perfectionist, doing something new was really hard for me. I don't like to do things I'm not good at, which is really hard when you also own a business because you can't be good at everything as you go through the business. And one of the things my coach said to me, I did a private lesson one-on-one, and I was getting really overwhelmed with how poorly I was playing. And he said, "Did you know that the best tennis players in the world, the number one, that they lose almost 50% of their points? So 50% of this premier athlete, 50% of what that person's doing is a failure, but it's not holding them back." And the same goes in business. If you're willing to take the risks and implement the strategies to achieve that goal, you're going to likely fail more often than you're going to succeed. And success is a terrible teacher. So if you want to grow, you have to fail.
100%. And I think that we also, I just think about social media, I think about news, I think about how we amplify the most extreme versions of everything now. Like, you think about like a group of people 1,000 years ago, they don't know what's happening with, the group of people that's 100 miles away. They don't know about the person who is the fastest runner in the world. They have no idea. They know who the fastest runner is in their group, but like, that's it. And then maybe their group is like 100 people, and like that's who you have as the pool of like seeing successes and failures. And now we're just exposed to like, oh, this person made 3 posts and now they have 100,000 followers. Why can't I get that? And it's like, okay, well, that's probably like the top 1/10 of 1/10. Like it's in the top, 1% of 1% of 1%. Like, it's so small that it's unbelievable. But that's what we see all
Mhm.
the freaking time. All we ever see is the massive outliers. And we see it amplified so much over and over and over again that it's like, well, I'm not getting that. And I think the sports analogy is perfect. Like, in tennis, if you win 51% of the points, you might be the best player in the world.
Mhm.
In baseball, if you hit the ball 1 out of 3 times, you are one of the best hitters in the world. Like in basketball, if you make half of your shots, you
Mhm.
are the best shooter in the world. I don't think anybody has a 50% shooting average over their career. But then we go on social media and it's like, oh, well, if your first video didn't get a million views, then you failed. And it's so detrimental to building up the habit of like actually growing a business. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on like how to coach people through or to think through how to get into just a different mindset where it's like my goal is to be consistent and to again, I like your working backwards framework. Like, here's my goal, and here's how I'm going to work backwards, and here's what each day looks like. And then just going to rule out all the distractions. But I don't know at like a practical level if you have any thoughts on how to begin that shift, because I do think it's just such a shift for most people now. Like, we've gotten
Mhm.
so inundated with flooding our minds with all these ridiculous outliers that it now is going to require like a hard reset.
It absolutely is. And I think one of the things about athletes is that we can use their statistics and talk about their success and failures openly because it's public. But we don't consider the fact that anybody that we see as successful is also failing just as much as the success that we're seeing. We just don't see that. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So, from a practical standpoint, what I did is I cleaned up my feed. Anybody who's every time I came across a post, I felt like I was playing the comparison game, I decided to unfollow them.
Mm,
Not because I didn't find their content valuable, but because it was impacting my mindset. Then I cleaned up my feed to remove anything that was fear mongering or just getting in the way of me taking a mental break. I use social media mostly for a mental break if I'm using it personally, and then I use it strategically for my business. But the reason I wanted to lead with the mindset piece is because today in this world, we have AI and we've got influencers and we've got this mix that, in all honesty, is creating a massive disconnect between the buyer and who they're buying from. AI is brilliant when you're using it as a tool. It is not brilliant when you're using it as a replacement for you. And people are craving authenticity and real people. And so we have an assumption that if you have 250,000 followers or 2 million followers, that you're really successful in making a lot of sales. And that's absolutely not the case. And I can tell you that as somebody who runs a successful business with not a lot of followers, but I can look through my followers and I know that they're my niche. And so I'm happy with that number because it does turn into a successful revenue stream. But in today's world, where we're at is that I'm sure everybody listening has heard we're in a trust recession. And that's going to continue for a long time. It's going to take a really long time until people trust. And we may never trust in the way we did 5 years ago, especially in the online space. So, with that trust recession, we have to look at the data that's showing us that we need around 7 to 8 hours of connection and contact with somebody before we are primed and ready to buy. And that's not 7 or 8 hours of talking to me or to you or watching your videos. That's emails and blog posts and social media. It's taking a quiz. It's all these touch points along the way. And cumulatively, those start to build a connection. But you can't build that connection if you're hiding behind AI, filters, or graphics. You have to build that connection as a real person, which means you have to show up, which is the scariest thing for most people because now you put yourself out into the world. And what if it doesn't go the way you hoped? And I can guarantee you it's not. It's not going to go the way you hoped. It may go better sometimes, but it certainly will not always go the way you planned because everything's unpredictable. And because we have no control over the algorithm. We have very little control over most things. The only thing we can control is how we show up and how we run our own businesses and align our goals and priorities. So that's why the mindset piece comes back, because if you aren't actively addressing that, I don't care how many followers you have. I don't care what revenue numbers you're meeting. At some point, you're going to plateau because you're not looking at what's getting in the way of that growth. And the truth is, if you're in a moment of success, what it took to get you to this place of success, it's going to take something new to get you to the next level. And so we constantly have to be looking at what the next level is and then what is going to be asked of us to achieve that.
totally. And I think that whatever you're seeing now is the result of the all the work that you've done in the past, which is why it is so detrimental that you like that there is this mindset of like, oh, instant success. I get this, I get that, and I totally agree with you. I think a lot of times the people that are making actual amounts of money. They're not like the millions or billions of followers. They're much more focused on who they're trying to serve and how they're trying to serve those people, and they know exactly what to do with their audience to make sure that they are successful. And I like the 7 to 8 hours thing a lot. I think that is so true. And also, the reason why I've seen a lot of people that used to use our product go out of business because they didn't want to make that transition to showing up for whatever reason. Can't, won't, don't, whatever. Like any of those options, it just didn't happen. And now there's a new wave of people that are coming along that they're doing it differently, which I think is really healthy. Like they are showing up online, but they're showing up selectively with good boundaries. Like, I'm going to show up and talk about these three topics. And yes, I care about those topics personally, but I'm not just showing up and blurting everything on the internet the way that, like, if you think about like vloggers from 2008, like,
Mhm.
that was probably really unhealthy in retrospect. Like, you should not put every single moment of your life on video.
Oh.
But now I think people have figured it out. And hopefully that will also help people with the fear where it's like, you don't need to show your whole life on the internet, like to be showing up and being authentic. You just need to pick some things that you deeply care about, that your audience and your customers also care about, and then
Mhm.
you can share those things. What do you think about that?
100%. I mean, this is the year of the personal brand from a branding and marketing perspective, but that doesn't mean that you watch me do my laundry and you know what kind of car I drive and you know what's going on, you know what kind of argument I had with my daughter yesterday. That's too personal and that's too much. What we do need is we need to have some level of connection. So if you know who your audience is, which everybody should know who's in their audience, there are some pieces that are relatable. So in my world, I deal with a lot of speech, occupational, and physical therapy, private practices, coaches, wellness experts. My niche tends to be predominantly female. A lot of them are mothers and they work with a lot of mothers or people who have children. So they are bringing that in to the personal brand, but it's not exposing every layer of it. you know, for me, I took up tennis. It brings something else interesting to the table. Oh, I can talk about it. You can see videos of me playing it. I can relate it back to business. It's not just this random thing that I'm showing up with, but it makes me more relatable as a person. I'm trying something new, whether you play tennis or not. It's something different. It's hard. It's new. I'm putting myself out there. I'm prioritizing myself. I'm filling my cup. And so that's an element of the personal brand that people are connecting with and they see themselves in me, which builds that trust. So they're more ready to purchase.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Like, just, a sport or a new hobby or a new initiative that you're taking on that can be in business, outside of business, doesn't matter. That is authentic to you. Like, it's something that you actually are, pursuing and you care about, but it's not just like you're blabbing everything on the internet. And I think that's like the perception that people also need to let go of and move past, because like if you do think of it that way and you're like, oh well, it's all or nothing, I have to show my whole life on the internet in order to have a personal brand, and that's what people are telling me I have to do, then I get why you'd be a hard no on that. Like, yeah, I agree. And I mean, that seems right. Like, if somebody's telling you that you need to do that, you might want to ask why they're telling you to do that. But if you can just, yeah, have a few things that are relatable, that do humanize you, that do bring you, and it can be personal to you, right? Like, it can be personal to how you're wired. Like, for myself and the way that I'm doing it, I'm wired to ask questions. I ask people questions all the time. Podcasting, I know you have a podcast as well. It's like, if you're wired in a certain way, then lean into that. And you don't have to go and try to be something that you're not. You don't have to go and try to expose every aspect of your life to the whole world, for just to try to make a buck, because even if that worked, I think that'd be pretty miserable.
Yeah, and there are probably some brands out there where that does work, but it's editing and being strategic with how you're showing up. And the same with your business. Some people believe in financial transparency. Oh, we did this much in revenue. We made this much money. That is okay for some people. It's not okay for others. They're not comfortable with it. You have to choose what you're comfortable with within what you're exposing about your life, but it is normal to feel uncomfortable showing up. If you grew up in my generation, we didn't grow up with phones in our hands and with social media. So it is difficult to understand how to make that feel natural because we just didn't grow up in that world. And then there's people who I coach who grew up in that world and they are very comfortable showing up. So you have to look at where are you playing safe because it's challenging you and making you step outside your comfort zone, and what is your comfort level and how do you want to edit what you're willing to talk about to protect your own privacy but also still show up authentically. And I think even in business, you may have a large team and not have one person be the face of the business. That's okay, but we can still see some behind the scenes. What goes on behind the scenes? Can you walk us through a decision-making process? Can you share equipment that you use? Do you have team outings? What kind of conferences are you going to? You can build a personal connection, even as a larger brand, by showing us inside, which makes us feel like we're part of it. And people want to feel part of your company to have that trust.
I think that's such a good point. And you know, I'm also from the generation where we didn't grow up with phones. The idea of, it was like a camcorder with a physical thing in it, and like you'd have to develop it before you could watch it. Like it's so different. But I do think that like the challenge for that generation, for our generation, is how do you show up and just be online, just share your stuff. But the advantage is that there's so much more depth of knowledge because we've been through more, we've had more experiences. And then for the younger generation, they're great at showing up, but sometimes lack the actual knowledge and experience. Like that's why I think the content can get stale really fast because it's like, yeah, you're great at like just showing up and talking, but at some point you're just repeating the same thing over and over again. There's no depth to it because you haven't actually done the work of learning. And I think that's going to be the struggle that I already see with that generation. But then with our generation, I think it's an even bigger struggle where it's just like showing up at all feels impossible because it's just not something that you grew up with. And it's almost like learning a language in some sense. It's like if you start when you're a kid, easy. If you try to learn when you're 28 or 35 or 42, almost almost impossible, not impossible, but really really hard to like actually to lean in and do it. But I do think there's like huge dividends. Like I see a lot of brands where they're having just massive success because they've figured out social content, they figured out video content, they figured out how to show up in a way that's real and authentic, and not like too much or too little. So I do think you're right. It's the year. It's the year of the personal brand.
It is. And I think there's a misconception that it means only showing up on social media. Your website should reflect some authenticity. When I land on a website where it's just very corporate, where is a person? I cannot even find a picture of a real person. There is this, again, there's a disconnect. But when I can see the founders, the people behind it, the story behind it, there's already another layer of trust. So your website, blogs, guest blogging, podcasting, even commentary and support inside of Facebook groups or on threads, Substack. There are all sorts of places that you can show up that don't require you holding a camera up and yapping at the screen. I think you should be on social media, but you don't have to rely on that 100% to start to implement some of these strategies.
That's super true. It's super true. And I do think that we are opening back up the other channels. Like initially, it kind of felt like everything was this massive flock to video. Now we're kind of walking that back. Like, if anything, right? Like now a lot of Instagram people are starting to do YouTube, which is much more long form conversational. It's almost like writing a blog post, but you're speaking. It's more thoughtful, more in depth, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously the rise of Substack, it's like, well, now written content is back when that was kind of like just a fire hose that had been turned off for a number of years. Like no one wants to read, but now it's starting to slowly come back. And now there's just all these channels. I think that's a great I think that's a great point to leave people on, is like, as you're thinking about personal brand, don't pigeonhole yourself. Like don't
Mhm.
don't be like, "Oh, I'm not good at TikTok, so I can't have one." Like start wherever you need to start. And I think that's great advice. For anybody listening, where can they check out your podcast, your website, all your other channels, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so my podcast is the Scale Smart podcast. Scale Smart is one word. And my website is Cued Creative. That's CUED creative.com.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Hannah. This is awesome. I think great advice for jumping into the rest of 2026.
Yeah, thanks for having me.